Welcome to the Word for 2022, a daily devotional where we're going through God's Word chapter by chapter. Today we're in 1 Kings chapter 18. In this chapter we have one of the most dramatic, one of the most impressive and inspiring accounts in all the Bible. Now there's been a drought that's been lasting for 3.5 years. It was an embarrassment to Baal because Baal was known as the storm god. He was in charge of fertility. He was the fertility god. And the people thought that he was in charge of rain and reproduction. But the prophet Elijah, God's prophet, had said, God will not allow it to rain until I say so. Now, that meant that there was no rain, no moisture, no crops, no produce, just dry, desolate dirt. Why did God do that? To make a point, to get the people's attention. But now in chapter 18, time is up. God speaks to Elijah and he says, now go show yourself to Ahab. It's time for a showdown. In verse 21, Elijah calls all the people together on Mount Carmel. There the people of God again have gathered. The prophets of Baal, 450 of them are there, Ahab and Elijah. And then Elijah says to the people, how long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, then follow him. But the people, they just stood there silently. How frustrating that must have been for Elijah. He gives them a clear decision to make, and they just stand there, dull and ambivalent. So then Elijah, he throws down the gauntlet. He said, it's time to have a challenge. Let's have a contest. There are 450 prophets of Baal and one prophet of God. And this was the challenge. They were to each set up an altar, choose a bull, sacrifice the animal there on the altar, but then Elijah said, do not set fire to it. For whatever God answers by fire, he will be God. Well, the prophets, they get to go first. So from morning until noon, they cry out, "O Baal, answer us." They danced about, but the word says that there was no response. No one answered. No one paid attention. Why? Because Baal is not a god. There is no other god besides the Lord of heaven and earth. Well, at noon, Elijah, he starts to taunt the prophets of Baal. And he says, maybe you should shout louder. Perhaps your God, he's in deep thought, or he's sleeping. Maybe he's traveling. Maybe he's busy. Now, literally, that word busy, it could be translated as relieving himself. What a way to taunt the prophets. Well, in response, they shout louder. They cut themselves and they become frantic. All day long they do this, but nothing happens. When evening sacrifice comes, then Elijah says, my turn. He repaired the altar of the Lord. He arranged the sacrifice. And then he makes the situation impossible. 3 times he has everything doused in water. A trench is put around the sacrifice and the trench even fills up with water. But then in verse 36, Elijah prays a short 2-verse prayer. Then fire falls down from heaven. It consumes the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and it licks up all of the water. The Lord answered by fire. In response, in seeing this, the people, they fall face down and they cry, the Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God. Now, the question that Elijah asked, how long will you waver between two opinions? That question is relevant today. Today, a decision needs to be made. A choice needs to be made. We are in the last days. The rapture could come at any time. It's decision time today. Now, not everyone will like the choice that you make. Not everyone will agree, but the choice is clear-cut, and the stakes, they couldn't be higher. It's time for no more fence sitting. It's time to get serious. The question, who will you serve? Joshua, he too called for the people to make a decision, but his response was in Joshua chapter 24, verse 15, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. That's the answer for my house too. Thank you for joining the Word for 2022.